Well, good afternoon, everyone. As we all know, the President is going to be sending up a nominee for the Supreme Court vacancy later this week. We all anticipate it's going to be an extremely well-qualified woman. And with regard to the schedule after that announcement, Chairman Lindsey Graham will lay out the plan for handling the nomination before the Judiciary Committee. Number two, a word about the negotiation on the CR. The Speaker seems to be hung up on doing the CCC replenishment, which has been automatically done under majorities on both sides for as long as anyone can remember. Hopefully we'll be able to get that worked out, but it basically is a message to farm country to drop dead if you don't do what we've automatically done largely without negotiation in the past, which is to replenish the CCC at the beginning of the fiscal year. With that, I'll be happy to turn it over to you, John.
Thank you, Leader. As the Leader pointed out, we are all looking forward to the President's announcement of his nominee to fill the vacancy on the Supreme Court. We expect that, as the Leader pointed out, to be a highly qualified woman. Most of us came to the Senate, ran for the Senate, in a lot of ways for big moments like this, for an opportunity to fill seats on the Supreme Court with nominees that believe in the Constitution and the rule of law and want to ensure that it's applied in the work that they do on the court. We've seen in the last several decades a lot of attempts by the Supreme Court, judicial activism, at legislating and attempting to push a political agenda on the court. That's not what the court was designed to do by our founders. And we're looking forward to having an opportunity to consider a constitutionalist to the Supreme Court, and someone I'm sure will be very well qualified, and I think the American people will have an opportunity to observe that person too and to make their own judgments. But I expect to be somebody that they're going to say, this is somebody we believe would be a great nominee to fill that important vacancy. As the Leader also pointed out, and I don't understand exactly why the House Democrats have decided to take the hostage of agriculture on the CR, but that's a really bad decision for them politically. The CCC program is one that funds all the ongoing Farm Bill mandatory programs that we authorize in the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill passed in 2018. ARC payments, PLC payments, conservation payments all come out of the CCC funds. Those would have to be delayed indefinitely if the CCC is not replenished. So the CCC, what I mean, Commodity Credit Corporation, is the place that we go to fund those important programs, and shouldn't be in the middle of this. I mean, they are basically saying to the farmers of this country to go pound sand at a time when they've experienced tremendous economic adversity as a result of the coronavirus and other low commodity prices and bad weather and everything else that goes with it. So I hope that they'll come to reverse that decision and decide that it makes sense to work with the Republicans on legislation that takes care of that important priority.
Well, as we honor the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and realize that she was a role model for many who entered the law, I'm looking forward to a nomination by President Trump, who I'm assuming is going to be a woman who will equally be a role model for a whole next generation in the legal profession. We know it's going to be a very powerful and positive appointee, someone who's already likely been vetted by the Senate, and a highly qualified woman for this role in the Supreme Court. So what have we heard from Chuck Schumer? We've heard threats to the institutions of our nation. And he says, if you do this, he'll do that. These threats have been going on for a long period of time. Remember in the spring when Chuck Schumer stood outside the Supreme Court and he yelled at the building and yelled at Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and said, you will pay the price. And what's he threatening to do? Add members to the Supreme Court if President Trump is not reelected, and if the Senate goes into Democrat hands, if you have the House, the Senate, and the presidency in the Democrat hands, that's what you're looking at. Now, adding members of the Supreme Court, you know who said that was a bad idea? Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Last year in an interview, she said, don't do it. She said 9 is the right number. She said to expand the court would politicize it and would not be the thing to do. But the Democrats aren't going to listen to her. They are going to go, after President Trump makes his nomination, they're going to go on a seek and destroy mission to undermine whoever the president nominates, whoever well qualified, to undermine their credibility and their character. So yesterday, Joe Biden was asked a question. What was he asked? He asked, well, who's on your short list? And he asked, what do you think about expanding the number on the court? Well, he didn't really answer either. And the reason he didn't answer who was on his short list is he knows if he answered any way, he would alienate at least half of his voters, either those loyal to the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez side of the ledger, or those who are not quite as extreme as they are. But either way, it was a loser question for Joe Biden. I don't know what Joe Biden remembers, but when you think back of the time when he played such a role in the hearings for Judge Bork, he was the one that basically turned on what became a political circus. I don't know if he remembers that he was the one that smeared Clarence Thomas. I don't know if Joe Biden remembers that he is the one that led the filibuster of Justice Alito. I'm not sure what he recalls of any of those, but I do know that the Democrats today here will continue to remember those lessons and use them against whoever it is that President Trump nominates.
Well, the Constitution requires 2 things to happen to put somebody on the Supreme Court. One is the president has to make a nomination, and 2 is the Senate has to determine that they're willing to deal with that nomination and eventually approve it. Anytime the White House and the Senate have been in general political agreement, and I think there have been 29 of those times in an election year, judges have been confirmed. When there's a disagreement, that's solved in another way. There's a constitutional job to be done here. We intend to do it. Another job we need to be focused on right now that seems to be slipping away from us is the opportunity to have another package on how to get people back to school, how to get people back to work, how to get people back to child care and better health. I've thought and told several of you over the last several weeks, I really thought the 1st of October was sort of the deadline where we could make that package happen. I hope we can really get focused here and not assume that somehow the economy can struggle along, that schools can do whatever they need to do, that hospitals will continue to do their work, and other healthcare providers if we just simply decide not to act. If you take the targeted package that we voted on in the Senate, the problem solvers package put together in the House of Democrats and Republicans, and even the House Republican proposal, there is clearly a deal there to be had. We don't need to let this limp along as we finish out this election year and see then what we can do after the election. We need to deal with that now. I hope we can still figure out a way to take all of those elements that there's broad agreement on and come up with whatever that agreement is.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I see her spirit and determination reflected in so many generations of young women leaders today, leaders like my daughter Libby. And when I found out the news of her passing last Friday evening, I was at an event. I quite literally teared up in front of the audience. While we may not agree on everything politically, I really admired what a tremendous woman she was and what a great example she set for, again, so many generations of women leaders. So all of my best wishes to her family during this very, very difficult time. With that being said, we do expect a nomination coming from the president very soon. And as a fairly new member of the Judiciary Committee, I do look forward to vetting whoever that nominee may be. I will do my duty as a member of that committee. Moving on to the CCC, as has been mentioned by a number of my colleagues, for nearly 3 decades, we have moved forward with the replenishment of CCC funds for our farmers in a bipartisan fashion, supporting our farm bill, our farmers, and our ranchers. So many of those supports go to conservation efforts, they go to dairy, you name it. It is there to support our farmers, our ranchers, and maintain the integrity of our food supply here in the United States. So I do hope that Speaker Pelosi will rethink her idea of stripping out funding for the CCC, holding our farmers hostage, putting that funding back into this continuing resolution bill and moving forward with it. We in farm country, we will remember this. We will remember this. And we need that funding back in to take care of our farmers, but everyone across the United States that enjoys eating. So thank you.
Excuse me. Well, when this Republican president was elected in 2016 and when the American people expanded the Republican majority in the Senate elections of 2018, the expectation of the American people was that should a Supreme Court vacancy arise, that vacancy would be filled. We will act because the American people want us to act. The people of Indiana in particular want me to act on this forthcoming nomination. Historical precedent supports action in a case like this clearly, and the president's put forward a list of incredibly talented potential nominees, including Indiana's own judge, Amy Coney Barrett. But I think any of the judges that the president has been discussing in recent days would be an excellent choice. It's my intention to dutifully evaluate the records of whomever the president ultimately nominates and to ensure bold action following his nomination. I have high confidence that the American people are going to be favorably impressed by a faithful constitutionalist nominee, and they'll be proud of the person who becomes the next associate justice on the Supreme Court of the United States.
One further observation you might enjoy. As we celebrate the life of Justice Ginsburg, you might be interested to know that there is currently pending before the Judiciary Committee a nominee I recommended to the President for the District Court who went to Columbia, had originally applied for Justice Scalia. Justice Scalia ended up being full, picked up the phone and called his good friend Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and she hired the guy who had applied with Scalia, knowing full well he was pretty much of a Federalist Society type person. And Justice Ginsburg said to him, well, it'll be a good challenge for me to have a clerk who challenges my assumptions. Just another anecdote about an extraordinary justice that the country lost this week. Yeah.
Mr. Leader, are you confident you have the votes to move this nomination now? And is it your goal to have this person confirmed by Election Day?
The next step will be for Chairman Graham to lay out the way to handle this in committee. And when the nomination comes out of committee, then I'll decide when and how to proceed.
Mr. Leader, early polls show that a majority of Americans disagree with your approach. They want you to wait. Does that give you pause?
Well, as all of us have pointed out, we have an obligation under the Constitution, should we choose to take advantage of it, with a president of the same party as the Senate, to advance the nomination. And we will certainly do that this year. This Senate is in current Senate elected the last time in 2018 will be here till the end of the year, and the president will be here till January 20th.
But do you understand why many Americans view this as a double standard?
I can only repeat that we have an obligation under the Constitution, should we choose to take advantage of it, to fill the vacancy, and I assure you that's very likely to happen.
You've spoken highly of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Why not listen to her dying wish, apparently, to allow the next president to make this decision?
Well, as Senator Barrasso pointed out, I prefer another thing she said recently, which was she thought the number of the Supreme Court ought to be 9.
Well, what about that? What about that wish?
Mr. Leader, have you spoken to President Trump recently about this vacancy? And then also, do you think that trying to get this done before Election Day gives your members an appropriate amount of time to vet a potential candidate?
Of course, I've talked to the president about it, yeah, from the very beginning.
And what about the timeline?
Yeah.
Mr. Leader, does the possibility that the election could be contested and potentially go through the courts up to the Supreme Court factor into your thinking about this timeline at all? I apologize. Does the reality that we could face a contested election coming up, that it could end up in the courts, that the Supreme Court could be making decisions about the results of the election factor into your thinking about the timeline?
Yeah, all kinds of things could happen. For example, my colleague, Senator Barrasso, and I think Senator Blunt as well, mentioned that there have been all kinds of threats out there way predating this Supreme Court vacancy. They're going to get rid of the filibuster. They're going to make D.C. a state, Puerto Rico a state, pack the Supreme Court. All these threats have been out there for months. What we do know is what the job is right now. The job right now is for this well-qualified nominee, which I expect we'll see on Saturday, to be processed in committee and brought to the floor and voted on. And that's what we anticipate will happen.
Leader McConnell, do you accept a deal that would have an extension of nutrition programs in exchange for farm aid? And do you think that it's possible to get a deal?
Take your mask off.
Sorry, I'll be louder. Would you accept a deal on the CR that would extend to the farm aid in exchange for these nutrition programs? And do you expect it?
Well, we're talking to the Speaker right now about trying to resolve the issue that many of us are concerned about what has been in the past, a kind of automatic replenishing of the CCC. This is a really big issue in farm country, and there are both Democrats and Republicans who are farmers. I'm hoping we can get that worked out and go forward. Thank you.
Can you assure us there won't